And welcome to the Aaron Katzman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katzman. We're here to speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon to be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, A-A-R-O-N, at lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatzman.com. That's www.aaronkatzman, aaronkatzman.com. You can follow me on Twitter and be sure to subscribe to the brand new YouTube channel, which I must say at Aaron Katzman is gaining traction like you won't believe. Okay, the growth is exponential. That's how you define exponential, but the growth is there. Please, there's great content on the YouTube channel. You'll really like it. There's some pertinent information, so feel free to subscribe. So speaking about pertinent information, I'd like to speak about Aliyah. That's immigrating to Israel. A few weeks ago, an old friend of mine, I probably haven't spoken in, I'm dating myself because most of you probably think I'm in my 20s. We probably haven't spoken in more than 30 years, or about 30 years, messaged me on Facebook saying they're coming to Israel. So we were just going back and forth and some certain issues. Now, Aliyah, or immigrating to Israel, was, red hot. And then Corona happened. So the numbers dropped in 2020. But the Jewish agency head, Isaac Herzog, has come out and he said that he expects over the next 5 years for 250,000 people, that's 250,000 people, to come on Aliyah, which is incredible. And he even says, though the number of people who immigrated dropped, there was a sharp increase in people interested in moving to Israel. Over 160,000 immigration inquiries were made, and the Jewish agency opened 41,000 immigration application files, which is twice the number for 2019. So even though there was COVID and people couldn't come because Israel sort of has locked the borders and there are no planes coming in, but even though people couldn't really come, the interest is just off the chart. So I want to take a few minutes. I'm not going to overload you with information, but I want to take a few minutes to give just a few things that you should think about when you're planning on immigrating to Israel or making Aliyah. Number one, it's important to have resources, right? Where you can sort of crowdsource or ask questions. There are a lot of Facebook groups out there which have unbelievable information. The leading Facebook group would be Living Financially Smarter in Israel, has tens of thousands, probably over 30,000 members, recent immigrants, old-time immigrants, people who are thinking about making immigration, doing Aliyah and coming to Israel. So it's a really, really good resource. There's also Financial Aliyah. There are a lot of different resources. Just go to Facebook, other groups. You can get really, really good information. Now, the financial issue probably will take a back seat. Certain things will take a back seat. When I was speaking to my friend, it was clear that finding a community to live in was by far and away, his most important issue, right? I asked him, where are your kids going to school? And he said, well, we've got to find a school and then we'll find a place to live, basically. They want to find a school first where we'll be really, really suitable for their children who are both coming in high school, which is a tough age to come in. And after they find the right kind of school, then they'll figure out a community close by where they can live. So I'm obviously not, I understand that getting your family settled is by far and away the most important issue, but there are other issues. The first issue that I'd like to speak about is currency, right? You're not going to be living, if you're coming from America, you're not going to be living in dollars anymore. If you're coming from Canada, you're not going to be living in Canadian dollars. The UK, you're not going to be living in sterling. And for retirees, currency is even more important, meaning that since you're going to be living in shekels, you have to somehow hedge yourself. You have to somehow move some money over. One way or another, you've got to have exposure to the shekel because it goes up and down. There's a story I wrote about in my book that I've written about lots of times, about a retired couple I sat with, that made Aliyah with $1 million, thinking they needed to generate $40,000 a year to supplement their pension and Social Security. Now, this is a few years ago. Locally, they had about 4 million shekel, and it wasn't a problem to generate the money they needed. But in the span of 6 months back then, right, the shekel strengthened by 20%, and all of a sudden they had all kinds of financial issues. Why? Because in local terms, their $1 million was now worth about $800,000. And to generate the income that they needed became a lot more difficult. Now, a millionaire can obviously weather the storm easier than somebody sort of, mass affluent who has $250,000 to $500,000 of money, where that 20% hit in the currency would destroy their retirement. Now, for a not so great ending, that couple, by the way, ended up moving back to the States. They couldn't, the currency kept declining. They wouldn't move money over. They were getting creamed by the shekel, and ultimately they decided they moved back. Now, most people have success stories with immigration, but you should be warned, right, that that's an issue. Another issue that I'd like to speak about are retirement accounts. I started off by saying that oftentimes investments or financial issues take sort of a backseat to family issues and getting settled, and it's totally understandable. But what you can't do is forget about your retirement accounts. Probably one of the most common financial issues I actually run into with prospective clients is they haven't looked at their IRAs from America, the 401ks, in years, right? The thought process is usually that since this money is for retirement, they'll just let it run, and they shouldn't worry about it now. And Aliyah is ongoing, and there's a lot of pressure at the beginning, and inertia sits in, and they didn't think about it at the beginning, and then 1 year and 2 years and 5 years turns into 10 years. Then you have a year of COVID where it sort of just skips a year, right? And they haven't looked in their account in 10 years. And then voila, they might be up the creek. So as retirement approaches, they notice that the account value, let's say, didn't really do very much over that extended period of time. Why? Because they never looked at their investments, or they were in cash or whatever, right? So it's really important to take care of your retirement accounts as well. Another issue that we've spoken about here is if you've got money in the U.S. brokerage account, be very, very careful that they will allow you, that they will keep servicing your account once you're living in Israel. Obviously, it's something I've written about. It's something that's out there in the media, that a lot of firms are getting rid of accounts of Americans who live abroad. This is not just Israel, right? This is if you could live in London, you could live in Paris, you could live in Singapore. It doesn't make much of a difference. If you're American who lives abroad, there could be potential issues. So before you come to Israel, you might want to check with that firm, or check with licensed advisors in Israel to make sure that you have a solution, that you can transfer your account to another firm that will work with expat Americans. I hope this helps. If you've got any questions or comments about Aliyah, you're thinking, one of the things I like to do is help prospective Olim. I do Zooms with them all the time. I do phone calls with them all the time, just to get them on the right path financially, something I enjoy doing. So I want more and more people to move to Israel. So if you've got any questions or comments, feel free, once again, to email me at Aaron, Aaron, at lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatzman.com. That's www.aaronkatzman.com. You can find me on Twitter, and be sure to subscribe and check me out on the YouTube channel. Once again, if you're thinking about making Aliyah, feel free to reach out to me. Again, email me. You can message me on one of the platforms that I just mentioned. I'd be happy to help. And these are some small financial issues. There's a whole laundry list, but I don't want to overload you with information right now. You've been watching The Aaron Katzman Show, and we'll speak to you really soon.